To call the board meeting for October 25th to order. I'm going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Secretary, if you can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Board members, we're going to start the meeting. If you could take your seats.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, if we could have a roll call.
Yes, sir. Mr. Ferre? Here. Ms. Gutierrez? Here. Mr. Holland? Here. Mr. Namdar? Mr. Malouf? Mr. Martinez? Mr. Martinez is here. Mr. Pago? Here. Mr. Sanabria? Here. Ms. Solar McKinley? Here. Mr. Vigil? Mr. Wortman?
Mr. Vigil is here too.
Okay. Vice Chair Fano? Here. Chair Lasarte? I got it.
Here. Madam Attorney, if we could have a declaration for the voting conflicts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, you have a potential conflicts document in your package. If there are any members that have any conflicts related to any of the action items, please note it for the record today. None shown, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Director, are there any citizen comments?
None received, sir.
If we could have a motion to approve the meetings, the minutes.
Second.
Hearing no objections, the item passes. Mr. Director, will you give us a report?
Yes, sir. Chairman, board members, I wanted to report on 3 issues, our social responsibility initiatives. I wanted to update you on various projects that we're working on, and then let you know where we've been the last last month and where we've attended. On the Social Responsibility Initiative, Mr. Chair, we participated for our safety campaign at numerous events, FIU's Homecoming, Jobs Fair hosted by the Chairman of the County Commission and various state representatives. We also participated in the Susan G. Komen Walk for Life on October 15th. On that issue, Mr. Chairman, we've had these T-shirts that we created. And here at staff, just from staff, donations from staff, loose change, we've raised over $1,000 just on that for the event for breast cancer, for Liga contra el Cáncer, which is the local charity that we are partnering with this month. This last Friday, October 21st, MDX participated with the state of Florida, with Florida DOT, and Hialeah Miami Lakes and the school board on their teen driver safety event, and it was very good from what I understand, and MDX will continue the partnership with the school board for next year and continue to do that. This weekend we'll be at the auto show, and again we'll have our booth with safety and getting folks to do the pledge and make them aware of texting and driving. On the projects front, as an update to last month's meeting on 87404, which is the Killian interchange project, goes from the Turnpike to Kendall Drive. It is slated for completion later this year. We've had a lot of rain days, but it'll be completed by the end of the year. We did meet with the residents that showed up last month, and we had about a 2.5-hour meeting to go over our safety report. We are making modifications as we specified in that safety report, and they are being implemented as we speak. There are many that have already been implemented. Another activity on the corridor, for those of you that drive 874 in the last couple of days or in the next week, you'll see that landscaping has already started on the corridor. Outstanding, and that is, again, culmination of discussions we had at operations and at Public Communications Committee. On the 87409, which is the companion project just north from Kendall Drive to the Palmetto, that's also to widen the corridor from 4 to 6 lanes. The project got a notice to proceed in June, as directed by this board. The kickoff meeting with the public is going to be held next week, and you will see dirt turning next week. The project is just under 2 years, 690 days roughly, and 2 years from now, the entire 874 corridor will be a 6-lane facility with brand new pavement, landscaping, and safety improvements. On the Central Boulevard front, The project continues to be on schedule and on budget. Completion is scheduled for early 2013, the spring of 2013. Mr. Chairman, this month we attended staff, Alfred Lurigado's, Steve Andriuk and Ivan Del Campo attended the ITS World Congress. And I'll let them tell you a little bit about that. Mr. Ferre attended as well, and he gave an update at the Policy and Planning Committee. But there's something that was distributed at the meeting that we want to share with you, and Alfred's going to be doing this now. But as was stated at the Policy and Planning Committee, incredible technology. Mr. Lurigados, and I'll steal his thunder, I guess. Mr. Lurigados is preparing a presentation to provide to the Operations Committee this month coming up. It'll talk about where MDX is in this puzzle of the ITS and technology front and how we can take it to the next level as far as driver information and value to our customers on all fronts. So he'll be preparing a presentation on that. And Alfred, Steve, Ivan, if you have anything to add, this is your opportunity, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman, board members,
Steve.
this was my first event ever attending the ITS World Congress or any ITS meeting to that fact. What I was most impressed upon was the amount of interaction with the vendors. This was a conference attended by upwards of 10,000 people and providers of technology from around the world. We were able to do hands-on with the technology, see how it was operating, and actually question how it interacts with the toll side from my perspective. So from a brief point of view, it definitely gave me what I needed to bring back to MDX.
Mr. Leals, would you like to add anything? Or?
Next month at Operations, we'll be giving a full update that I think we invite the entire board. I know you will all be
This calendar,
excited.
yeah, the calendar that you guys just received was given to every attendee at ITS Congress. And if you notice the front cover, it has our Road Ranger. And we're also, I guess, one of the months in there. I'm not... September month, and it shows our gantry. So, and Mr. Secretary and his staff and Senator Garcia are in January. The point of it is that Florida is recognized as a leader in the ITS front, and we're moving forward. And Mr. Ferre was there as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Absolutely, Mayor.
I'm happy to, because Gonzalo came over and congratulated me on being appointed to the Florida Transportation Commission. I just want to tell you that the Florida Transportation Commission is alive, and this governor is making a full sweep. And so within another month or so, out of the 9 members of the Florida Transportation Commission, only 1, maybe 2, will have been there more than 6 months. And as it turns out, I think I have the 2nd or the 3rd seniority. I've only been there now for 4 or 5 months. The former chairman, who's no longer chairman because he's no longer a member, appointed me to the ITS board. And I just wanted to tell you that the ITS board, of course, is ITS is the largest transportation entity in the world. It has a board of 45 members, 15 from Europe, 15 from Asia and the Pacific, and 15 from the Americas. So it really is and obviously I'm the only one representing Florida. So all of a sudden, I've been thrust into the transportation world in a big time way. And I want to tell you that I'm sorry more of you did not take this opportunity to go to Orlando to see this, because I've never seen anything. I mean, I always think IBTTA is fantastic. It's absolutely minuscule compared to the hundreds of millions of dollars that are spent by transportation companies
At that meeting last week was the president of Toyota, Siemens, General Motors, Ford. I mean, it's unbelievable the attendance of the people who go there. I'm happy to report to you that I had a very nice meeting with Mr. Bill Ford, and I have informally asked Mr. Bill Ford, who is the executive chairman of Ford Motor Company, to help MDX in the idea of promoting a new form of transportation which is yet to be designed and that I hope that will be in the forefront. And I invited him and the Ford Motor Company to be a part of all this. And so they will be inviting Javier to Dearborn, Michigan, for a meeting to discuss the possibilities of joining the state of Florida and MDX in particular in trying to develop new forms of transportation using expressways. So the thing that, lastly, the thing that struck me the most about the ITS meeting is the unbelievable advances that are being made. And by I want to tell you that there was a demonstration by 7 of the motor car companies, Ford, General Motors, Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, and so on, that had coordination where cars speak to cars. And those cars were literally, like 5 feet apart, going 60 miles an hour. And I was in the front seat, and I want to tell you, I didn't say a word, which is very, very difficult for me. I didn't say a word for an hour. And the technology is just mind-boggling. I've distributed. I would really ask all of you to read it. And this is an article that came out in April of this year in The Economist about transportation and the infrastructure problems that we have in America. And I think the good news is that innovation is there, and the new things that are happening are just unbelievable. The bad news is that gridlock in this economy has us locked into a situation that, to me, says that MDX is much, much more important than any of us really. As important as we think MDX is, it's a lot more important because we have methodologies and we have a system that's now proven time and time again that I don't think can be duplicated. In one of these projects Javier was telling me about, that the engineers estimated $79 million and we came in $28 million under that. And this is happening now so many times that I don't think there's any question that we're making important points, and I'm sure that even the most obtuse and the most negative critic that the toll industry has, and that MDX has, and that the other toll agencies have in Florida, cannot fail but to understand that this is really the way of the future. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, to finalize, and it's a good segue, last week we attended the Team Florida Quarterly meeting in Jacksonville, and the keynote speaker was Lieutenant Governor Jennifer Carroll, and we also had a speaker, Senator John Thrasher. And Lieutenant Governor Carroll spoke about the need for tolling for adding new capacity in Florida, and how the state and the governor's vision was for tolling to be a major component, and the Team Florida is well positioned to execute that. So it's in line with what Washington is saying, that they need to figure out how to fund the additional $20 billion a year necessary just to maintain the interstate system around the country when gas tax revenues are going lower and lower because of all these technology advancements and fuel efficiencies that exist. So something's got to come to a head, and I think direct user financing is an option. Finally, Mr. Chairman, wanted to just give you an update on 2 items that MDX is coordinating with the county on and with our partners, our local partners. There are 2 Tiger Grant applications that are being developed for Miami-Dade County. One is with Miami-Dade Transit, and it's to develop express buses on State Road 836 from West Kendall into the Intermodal Center and eventually into downtown. MDX is partnering with Miami-Dade Transit as the lead agency. We are going to do the environmental documentation, and we're going to also be doing a cost-benefit analysis on behalf of the county. So that's our partnership. The second application is one that is being spearheaded by the City of Sweetwater and Florida International University. Florida DOT, I know, has been approached, and MDX has been approached for University City. And that is basically to develop a transit-oriented development in conjunction with the City of Sweetwater and FIU and their new campus and the anticipated 60 to 70,000 students that will be at the University Center campus in West Dade County. To that end, there's going to be a meeting at the airport that Secretary Abreu, or Director Abreu now, is hosting, where the various applicants are going to get together, and maybe there's a way to package these and get a more bang for the buck for the region. But the point is that we're exploring every avenue to find monies to get people moving and giving people modal choices in this community. So that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Larry, and I know that I've asked you in the past, how
Yes.
are things going with the MIG issue?
With the Intermodal Center, we got an agreement from the state. We're reviewing it. Our internal team is meeting tomorrow, October 27th. I've communicated that with Carl Filer at the state, and we will be sitting down with the state shortly afterwards to go over our commentary and reach an agreement on that. Okay.
Any questions to the director? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item, which is the General Counsel's report. Pam?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if both Board Member Martinez and Board Member Vigil, you were out of the room when we did the conflicts declaration. I just wanted to make sure the record was clear that you had none. Okay, thank you. Really nothing to report this month. I know that you all are aware that we did have a trial in the community asphalt case last month. This Friday, proposed orders are due from both sides to Judge Venzer, so I anticipate it's probably going to be 2 to 3 weeks after that before we have a decision from the judge in the community asphalt case. And we do have mediation scheduled tomorrow in the Superior landscaping case that I've been taking the lead on that case.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I
Mediation
think
for
the
what?
microphone's
Mediation for what?
Low, right? Or is it me that I'm losing my hearing?
Mayor Frey, the first item that I mentioned was the community asphalt case.
No, I heard that.
And so we're going to be submitting proposed orders on Friday.
No, I heard that.
Okay.
It's
The
the
second thing
mediation
is
part that I didn't catch.
mediation in the Superior landscaping case is going to take place tomorrow. And so I'll keep you briefed on both of those.
Any questions? Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, we'll go to the MPO representatives report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We had a long, extensive meeting from being time off, and FDOT is happy to report that their tentative transportation work program was endorsed with a couple of little changes, but something very important and relevant to us is going to be something that they are studying, which is a managed lane project component on 826 heading north. So keep our eyes and ears and focused on that particular PD&E that FDOT is doing, as we should play some pivotal role once you're done with that study. At the same time, many other things were approved, such as housekeeping items as a toolbox, and they're now going to do an annual report, which is great because they've never really done an annual report and reported everything that they do or don't do. And another positive note is going to be that FDOT, again, is going to be presenting next month an update where they're at on 395, and that's all very important to us as it relates to what's going to happen there and the bottleneck once the tunnel is in place, where we're going, what can we do together. And they're also going to give a new status interactive presentation of 826 and 836 interchange, which again, we're partners there. And lastly, something new for MPO, they did adopt the wisdom of doing an MPO Regional Transportation Summit, which all the transportation agencies are going to be invited, so everybody can sit at the table and discuss what it is they're doing and how are we going to move the next generation. So with that,
Good idea.
it concludes
Your
my report.
Are there any questions to the MPO representative? Any? Hearing none, we'll go to the treasurer's report. Mr. Vigil.
Thank you,
Very
Chairman.
nice suit you're wearing.
Thank you. I thought it was time to buy some new suits. It's been a while. Thank you, Chairman Lasarte. I was told that boring is good in finance, and so this is a boring report.
As long as everything is in the black, it's very good boring.
That's exactly right. Our overall revenue so far is approximately at forecast. Toll revenue is about $190,000 above our $30.4 million forecast. So our toll and fee revenue is trending almost exactly in line with our forecast year to date. We're carrying receivables roughly in line with the prior year at approximately $8 million. There's been no change, and I think as time goes on, we're calibrating our receivables a little bit better. Our traffic, which I was surprised, and I think Maria's out today, but I wanted to according to what she's informing me, our traffic is up around 4.5% year to date, which is very surprising, and I think pretty positive if you think about it in terms of, I don't know, I'm not sure if it speaks to some seasonality in our results, maybe summer versus fall results, but it is certainly a good sign, and it could be a positive indicator. Our investment income, as I've mentioned the past several times, is down. It's about almost $100,000 below forecast, and that's the result of our low rate environment. And I mean, there's very little other than to continue to monitor that can be done at the present moment. And our expenses, as usual, are tending around 4% below budget, and so we continue to watch our expenses, but they are about 4% below budget. I don't know if anyone has any questions on the numbers, but I also wanted to add, in addition to that I was at a meeting of the Doral Chamber of Commerce about 2 weeks ago, and Bill Johnson, director of our port, spoke there. And it's the first time I've seen him speak, and he's very forceful, very good speaker. And there's some very interesting things that are going to be taking place in our port within the next 3 to 4 years. And I had discussed with Board Member Wortman and with our Executive Director to take the opportunity, and I'm mentioning this in the Treasurer's report because I do think it has very much to do with economic development in Miami-Dade County, to take the opportunity to invite the Port Director here to see how we can prepare for what they call Panamax vessels and the potential. There's still some hurdles to be crossed, but the potential increase in very significant increase in port traffic within, this is not 10 years from now, this is 2 to 3 years from now. Right. And we need to look at our system and see how we can best accommodate that and look at commercial traffic versus non-commercial traffic. And there could be a very significant impact in the very short term. And we have to look to see how we can make sure that we have the right throughput through our system. So with that, I conclude my report. Yes, board members and I.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vigil. I have a couple questions on Gradney. Since it's been a test case, I'd like to see or hear what the volumes have been and revenue stream, and also if you are taking up or will to be taking up CPI increases policy at some point in the future.
I'll answer the second one, and I'll let Steve address the volumes. As far as CPI goes, our policy today, as adopted by this board, talks to closing the system with ORT first before we address any kind of adjustments to any rates, and that's how it is currently. With that said, there's still a pending workshop that we will be scheduling with this board. I know we've briefed everyone. We just have to find the date to sit down and have that conversation. But our current policy doesn't address CPI until after.
Okay, if I may substitute that question for another question in terms of the violations, how are we doing, the trend in terms of the collection of the violations, the outstanding receivables on that segment?
Right.
To not answer the first question
Yes,
as far as
yeah,
related
yeah,
to the
yeah.
traffic, the toll-by-plate program continues to be improved, and we continue to move forward with our receivables. We are actually in the collections phase at this point. We've sent about a third of the files required to go to collections, and this is the third process in a four-process method of collection, which the last one would be then converting the toll-by-plate into violations where we actually issue a traffic citation. We're in the final phase of that testing, which should begin probably by the end of the year, where we actually go to the court phase. So to really answer your question, it's getting better. It's not where we want it to be or we expected it to be at this time, but within the next couple of months, we should finalize that process.
What about the Gratney, the numbers?
As stated, traffic is up about 4%. That's system-wide. Gratney didn't see that largest increase. We saw that at 874. I think a lot of that had to do with the improvements that we did. But on 924, I think, and this is off the top of my head, I don't have those numbers. It was around the 2% range.
Right. On the
for traffic.
On the Gratney for fiscal year end of last fiscal year 11, the Gratney was approximately 3% below the Wilbur-Smith estimate on traffic. Okay, compared to Snapper Creek. Well, Snapper Creek was 9% above on the estimates. That's 878, and on the South Dade Expressway, as far as traffic goes, the actual traffic was 86,652,000 for the year, and the forecast was 95,983,000. So it was down 9.72 for the South Dade Expressway. That's closing of as of June 30th of 2011.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The treasurer talked about 4% traffic increase. Do we know where that 4% is being realized? Where is the growth? Is that happening in 878, 874? Is that where is that coming from? And if that is the case, then talk to us a little bit about the difference of traffic of last year versus this year, and how is that progressing?
And I think that's where the 4% is coming from. It's not comparing forecasts because, and I don't deal with forecasts. That's pie in the sky look and how they sell bonds and so forth. I look at actual hard numbers, and I compare previous years to current year. That's where that 4% is coming from. We saw the largest increase actually at 836 on our western edge at 97th and 137th Avenue. The process of what occurred based on the movement of all electronic on the turnpike, I think, was the catalyst. That when they did their conversion to all electronic in February, we started to see the numbers coming our way. The next section was 874. That was due to the construction, which we saw the year previous. As that construction went away, we started cleaning up the roadway and opening up everything. That's when the traffic came back. A comment was made about when our peak is. We won't see that till after the turn of the year. Exactly. Our peak is in early part, first quarter of the year. So we're really surprised that we're seeing the numbers now.
Good. That's actually really good news, especially on the southern end of 836. That's very good news. Means I'm over the belly aching approach, and I'm using it, and I'm back on it. Could be from deterrent traffic of all the congestion you got going, Mr. Secretary. Can't answer that one, right? All the wonderful construction you got going. Jobs.
Any other questions to the treasurer? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item. The committee reports will take they're part of this record, and we'll take them in. But before we conclude that portion, I wanted just to I think it's important for the board members to know there was a presentation at the Operations Committee, I believe, on the Oleander corridor, correct, Mr. Director?
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to see if either the chairperson of that committee or staff could give us just a brief update on that Oleander corridor. It really deals with connectivity and the MIG
Correct.
and things of that nature.
Mr. Lurigados can give a very short update on what we presented and what were the next steps.
So I can see everybody from up here. Chair Lasarte and board members, the McDadeland busway connector, we discussed at the Operations Committee. We finished the initial planning study. Our next goal here is to work with DOT to get the MIC agreement finalized, and we don't want to move forward with that McDadeland busway until that MIC agreement is nearly finalized. And in parallel, we're going to be looking at funding strategies so that we don't use toll revenues or minimize the use of toll revenues to fund any or the next phase of that, which would be the PD&E study. So we're going to be looking at either non-toll revenue sources. We're going to be looking at grants and Tiger and everything else that we can try and apply funding sources to get the next phase of that corridor in the works. What's very important, the next phase of that corridor is going to be public involvement. We know that the southern end of that nearest to Dadeland is between a very vocal and outspoken community, and that public involvement process is going to be driving this over the next few years. We have started briefing some elected officials in the area, like the mayor of South Miami and a few others, and we're going to keep on doing that also in parallel to the next activity. So the MIG agreement, then subsequently looking for funding sources to fund the next phase of the PD&E, and we're going to, and also the folks at Flagler have indicated they were going to help us look for other governmental sources of funding. In addition to that, the public involvement will go in parallel.
Any questions from Mr. Lurigados? Since you guys are looking into this, is there any way, and I know I've spoken to you, Mr. Director, in the past, to deal with the CSX corridor, so we could do this in maybe in a parallel way, because if there's a corridor that's really critical, it's the east-west corridor on the 836 going into Kendall. I mean, is there anything that maybe we could do on this front?
FEC, and I think that was spoken to, that was mentioned at the committee meeting, and FEC has offered to help us with CSX, but
Correct.
it's difficult. So we'll say it public. It's difficult to work with CSX, but we will try. Absolutely. I know it's the chairman of the county commission's priority to see if he can do something on the CSX corridor, and we know that. Along this issue, we also discussed it at the Intergovernmental Public Communications Committee, and based on what came out of the operations and the strategy moving forward, the chairman of the PCC recommended that as these pieces fall in place, that we also task our federal advocates to see if there's any availability of funding, because this corridor has received a grant in the past from Congresswoman Ileana Ross-Lehtinen. So that was discussed at the Intergovernmental, and again, we've got it all noted for the steps forward.
If there aren't any questions, we'll move on to the regular agenda. Item 8A, if we could read it into the record.
Mr. Chair, item 8A is a locally funded agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation. This is to include open road toll signing structures in the department's current I-195 widening project. I believe Mr. Lurigados can speak in more detail to this item.
Move it.
Second.
Any comments from the board or questions? Hearing no objections, that item passes. Item B.
Item B is an interlocal agreement between MDX and Miami-Dade County to provide AMTES services for Miami-Dade County Rickenbacker and Venetian Causeway tolling lanes. This item was endorsed by the Operations Committee on 10/14. This is the second time that this agreement is before the board, that we have some modifications, and Mr. Andrew can speak to some of the changes to the agreement.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Sanabria.
I read the presentation. I commend the board, I commend the staff, and I commend the spirit of what we're about to do. And it says that it's revenue positive. I'd just like to have a brief explanation of that, please. I saw the exhibits as well, but
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Mr.
Mr.
Hendrick.
Mr. Chairman, board members, this is an interlocal agreement to allow MDX to be the oversight of the county's SunPass operation that they will initiate in the next coming months or early next year. What this allows is very similar to what we did with the Tampa-Hillsborough Expressway Authority, where using the expertise that MDX has as its staff to leverage that and assist the county in that oversight of toll operations dealing with toll by plate, et cetera. We will also provide them with assistance to the SunPass operations, which they will deal directly with SunPass, but we'll be the intermediary for them.
okay, explain how it will be revenue positive.
In the interlocal agreement that you have before you, part of what we already pay, the fixed costs that we pay ETC, they will pay portions of that based on the percentage of traffic that they're going to be processing against the total. In our calculation, that came up to about 5% of what we do today. So they're going to pay 5% of what we already pay directly to MDX. Also, in addition, is they're going to pay a portion of our operating costs for the salary and benefits that I have for my staff for that oversight process.
So there's always a cushion of 5% above our cost? Is that what you're saying? Cost plus 5?
No, sir. Say, for instance, we pay for an operation today, we're paying a fixed fee of $100 a month. They're going to pay 5% of that, even though we still have to pay that $100 if they're with us or not. The fact that we're bringing them on, now we're only paying out of pocket $95, and we're receiving $5 from them to cover that $100 fixed cost.
Exactly.
Any questions?
Move it.
Second. Mr. Chairman, again, I would recognize Mike Bowman, who's the division manager at the Causeways Division, right? Of some
Welcome.
new group. Okay. Solid Waste, I think, is in Public Works.
Does that mean that you're going to be able to use a SunPass on the Rickenbacker?
That's
That
correct.
is
That is
exactly what it
right.
means.
That's the big point there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's excellent.
That's what that is.
All right, hearing no objections, the item passes. We're going to go to item C.
Mr. Chair, item C is the procurement for P3 legal counsel services. The tech recommendation was approved on October 19th by the Policy and Planning Committee, and Mayor Ferre was our board oversight for this procurement, and Ms. Cordero can offer any detail that you may have or any questions.
Are there any comments or questions? Go ahead, Mr. Sanabria.
I'm sorry. It says on the presentation that the legal fees for these P3s will be mostly paid for by any unsolicited parties or solicited parties. Is that right? Explain to me how that works.
Public-private partnerships are in two fashions. They're the unsolicited manner, which then you can recoup that cost from the unsolicited proposer, or they are public-private partnerships that the authority wants to advance. If it's a project that the authority wants to advance, we would program the funding in our work program. The board would approve that line item in the work program, and we would move forward with task authorizations to these proposers. But on the chance that we get an unsolicited proposal and we need to engage our legal counsel team, we have a mechanism to recoup that cost from the legal counsel. That's what this says.
How do we recoup the costs?
We bill them, as we've done in the past,
We're going to bill them.
for our cost to review their proposal.
They still
yes.
retain. We're still their employer,
as we've done in the past. Yes.
and there's no conflict in that.
Why would there be
We actually have a policy that states
Yeah.
that that's the way we're going to process
Exactly.
those proposals.
Yeah, there is no
And
pro-
as
there's
part
no
of it, they
conflict.
submit also a deposit with their
Exactly.
unsolicited proposal for us to keep those costs.
Exactly.
Mr. Sanabria, what this would be is really just defraying any costs, whether it's P3 legal services or any experts that we would have to review an unsolicited P3 proposal. And so as far as having P3 legal counsel, that would be one of the costs that would be defrayed by, it's essentially a fee that comes along with a proposal for an
Right.
unsolicited
But to
P3.
clarify to his point, it can be, in other words, it's not that
Can
you
be.
have to, it
No,
can
it
be. In
can
other
be,
words,
exactly.
we could pay, or you can have the proposer pay. So,
Exactly.
yeah, there could be a potential cost. I know Mr. Sanabria is very sensitive when it comes to costs. Any other comments from the board? The only thing I wanted to say was, originally, was this set up to select 1, 2, 3? Why did we select 2? If I could just have a little bit of an explanation on that, Mr. Director.
Well, the contract allows to select up to 3. It it could be up from 1 up to 3, and the committee debated this, discussed it, and agreed to select 2, and they voted on it prior to the opening of the scoring, and the chairwoman was.
Excuse the interruption, but I think it's
Mayor,
an
go
important point.
You-
The
you
committee,
were the overseer.
yes,
Go ahead.
but this was done in committee. The committee agreed to select 2 before the opening
Scores.
of the score, so that the committee didn't know who the 2 were going to be.
The only thing, my concern is the following, is that unlike engineering firms, law firms, particularly large ones, have major conflict issues. So my thought is, if you have 3, you obviously go to number 1 first. You know, if they don't have a conflict, they can handle it. But if 1 and 2 have a conflict, at least you have a 3rd. It sounds crazy to those of you that don't practice law, but I can tell you I've been in big firms, and conflicts, especially when you deal in a very large project and there's very large companies involved, there's usually going to be.
Has a motion been made?
That's my thought. I'd like to hear what the rest of the board has to say about that.
I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most difficult things large law firms go through is the propensity to try to determine whether or not there's a conflict. And it can literally come up out of nowhere down the line when they're doing their due diligence. And the fact that 2 and 3 in particular here are so incredibly close to begin with, I'm not really have an issue with the fact that we're not like minimizing the amount of available individuals for this thing. Sorry, so I actually am very comfortable with the idea of having 3 in this particular case because we're getting assurances that at least if there's a potential conflict, they'll be able to go to another attorney without any delays. I don't think there's going to be a problem with doing that unless somebody on the board
You want to
disagrees.
make a motion? I'll second if you want.
My motion is to amend the recommendation, and instead of going with just 2 law firms, we go with 3 law firms. The top 3 who total scores here, instead of just 2.
1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3, which would be the 3 firms that score the highest here.
Second that motion.
There's a second. I just go ahead. I just wanted to clarify one thing, and Ms. Fuller McKinley, I'll let you speak in 1 second. This RFP originally contemplated 3.
Up to 3.
Up to 3.
So we're
Right.
not
So
changing
it's
that.
not like we're changing the scope and we're going from
Right.
something that had 2 and then now we're going to 3. This contemplated 3. No, he made I'm just saying I want to clarify it on the record because in the past, there's been situations where we wanted to add firms, et cetera, and we've had issues and heavy discussions on the board for that. I just wanted to clarify that. Ms. Fuller McKinley, did you want to say something?
Yes, I'd like to ask the question, how would it work then pricing-wise?
It's a good question. Ms. Cordero?
As part of the proposal, they submitted a price proposal. So we already have the hourly rate for the lead rep, which is the main individual that we will be utilizing for the firm. And they also included rates for the rest of their team.
Okay, but my question is, will 2 and 3 have to abide by
No.
the first?
Or the first has the highest one.
And number 3 had the lowest price.
Correct.
Right.
But still, that's my question.
Number 2 had the lowest price.
I don't think that would be
I mean, number 2 has the lowest of the 3. Number
2 has the lowest.
Two has the lowest?
2.
well, 2 has the lowest of the top 3.
Of the top 3, 2 has the lowest.
The other 2 are
So how do we,
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Whenever it's appropriate.
Go ahead, Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah. I want you to know that I sat through these presentations from 9:30 in the morning till almost 5. There's no question but that Nossaman, Ackerman with Mayor Brown, and in my opinion, Greenberg Traurig and Ballard Spar of Philadelphia were absolutely exceptional. So I think that any one of those 4 firms, we do well by them. I personally thought that Nossaman was by far the best. The reason why Nossaman was so impressive is not because they've done. Well, somebody approved.
Background music.
Yeah.
It's very impressive.
So I didn't do that on purpose.
You love sound effects.
The 590, they're doing the 595 in Broward County for the state of Florida. They did the tunnel for the state of Florida. But what really impressed me about them was the fact that they only work for the public sector side. So they really they understand Florida well, they understand the issues well, they represent the public side. Now, to me, a close second was Mayor Brown. And Mayor Brown is, without any question, the leading legal firm on P3s in the country. However, the vast majority of the things they do are for the private sector. So they're on both sides of this thing, which I think is terrific. Now, in the case of Greenberg Traurig, what I really like is that in the tunnel, they represented the private sector. And the other thing, of course, is that the lead counsel for Greenberg Traurig knows MDX inside and out. And Bruce, of course, has been the author of most of these instruments in the past. So I feel that we'd be saving a lot of money by going to someone who understands and can go to page and paragraph of the issue immediately. And they represented in the tunnel project the private sector. So I really think that the 2 that were chosen is a great combination. Now, having said that, I don't think that going to 3 in any way, Javier, violates the rule of law, if you will, that was established. The decision of going to 2, Maritza, was done by us, and it was passed unanimously by the committee. So the issue is not whether or not the mandate was for 2. That was a decision that we made prior to opening the numbers. Now, there is such a thing as the integrity of the committee system that we have. That I know of. Have we ever overridden a committee?
yes? Many times.
We have, right?
Yes, we have, many times.
So the fact is that there's no reason why we can't go to 3
Yeah.
from a broad point of view.
Well, I don't think it should be capricious. I think that if the RFP said up to 3, that we shouldn't allow 4.
Right.
That's capricious in my mind, because that violates the RFP. Now, my question again is about the fees, because at the end of the day, I want the people that have the lowest fee to be able to do the work. And we're going to give, because because everybody has good qualifications, but the fees are different. Why should I pay more for one firm than I am going to pay for another
Well,
firm?
since
That
I-
doesn't make sense.
Since I had the floor, and I don't mind you,
No, no,
I happily
that's
yield.
my question.
I happily yield to you. But Mr. Chairman, if I may, is there any way, Pam, legally that we can accept the 3 based on the lowest bid price, and if they don't want to do it?
No, not based on the lowest bid price. This procurement was
I
based...
understand.
It was based on both quality points...
No, I understand what the
and-
procurement was based on. That's not my question.
Right, and so you have to look at then when the points for the price bid along
Got
with
it.
the quality points are combined. And
That's
so
not
you have to
everyone's
go-
question. See,
Okay.
and that's not my question.
His question is here, I think, is that we have 1, 2, and 3. There is a discrepancy in prices between 1 and 2 and 3, between $4.95 an hour to $5.60 an hour. Okay. With, interestingly enough, to show you the irony of this, number 1 and number 2 are the highest and the lowest, with number 3 actually in the middle. I think what Ms. Solar McKinley and Mayor Ferrer are indicating is there a way we can resolve the hourly rate on this if we approve all 3 to have a consistency with the rate? Is that something we can or cannot do? Is that a fair
That's the
assessment?
question. Thank you for rephrasing it.
Thank you. I figure that's what they were asking. To
Let me
cut
take
to
it-
the chase.
Let me take it in 2 steps. Certainly, price has already been figured into who is the number 1 ranked firm and the number 2 ranked firm, 3 on down. When we make a decision about who we want to have represent us in a particular P3 procurement, we can negotiate with the firm
That's the question.
if they are interested in doing work for a lower price, but they under this procurement, are entitled to be part of the pool at even their higher
I got it.
hourly rate.
So for simple ramifications, is these are the 3 teams. If we pick 3, these are the 3 teams that are
These are
eligible
the
for the
3.
pool, correct?
Right.
But that doesn't preclude us later from saying, listen, so and so is offering us this at $4.95 an hour. Your price is $5.60. Will you accept the issue at this price hourly?
They're free
rate?
to do that.
We are free if these are the 3 teams in the pool to negotiate the hourly rate. Is that correct? Within the parameters of what is proposed between the 3 of them.
Yes.
Does that answer everyone's question?
I think that's a great question. I think
No, actually, it was a great question, Mr. Ray. I just helped it out.
It's a great question and answers.
There is another component to it that also could work if it was presented. Not that they have to do it, but because you have not actually completed the selection process, you have the recommendation. The other parties can voluntarily, if they wanted to, acquiesce to certain pricing based on what's in there as well.
No, we couldn't change the ranking at this point.
No,
The
you can
price-
change the ranking, but if they wanted to volunteer, I'm not asking them to do that. I think the negotiations process is the best way. I'm just saying, but you can, if we're ever in this position again, you could ask them, are you willing? Would you be willing? If they say no, then you still have to go forth with your rankings. But a lot of times people say, hey, I have no problem with it. To be competitive, I'll keep it there.
Hold on, Mr. Vigil wanted to go ahead.
Yeah,
Mr. Sanabria.
I just wanted to give another perspective on fees since I feel compelled to defend hourly rates. I have a friend of mine who's in-house counsel at Goldman Sachs, and he's from high school. I know him. He deals with complex derivatives and things that I can't understand. And he says his favorite outside counsel is Sherman and Sterling. It's also the most expensive. And the reason I asked him why, he said, well, because yes, he charges $900-some an hour, but I get an answer in 20 minutes that's right. And so bear that in mind when you're looking at hourly rates and you're looking at a niche sort of sophisticated practice. You're better off paying $560 to the guy that knows what he's talking about and being billed an hour than paying a firm $375 and they turn it with someone that doesn't know what they're doing and you get billed 20 hours. So
But hopefully all
this
3
is
of
not-
our choices
Right.
are in that same category.
But we're looking at the 3 firms that are real comparable, and the top 3 firms are all very close to each other.
Well, if you get what you pay for sometimes, and if you're looking for specialized expertise, it's worth it, my opinion, to pay for the top specialist in that particular area. You got to make sure it's done right. Not,
Right.
you know.
Listen, I agree, and I know you wanted to speak on the issue, Board Member McGinley, but I agree. I don't think anybody, listen, no doubt. These are three highly qualified firms. I think as a public agency, we got to try to get the best price once we start the negotiations, and we'll see who could do what. But I understand. Listen, there's people that specialize in something, and you're right. Sometimes you got to pay a little bit more, and you get to where we got to go. But I think we'll get there at that point. Mr. Sanabria, and then Mr. Sanabria?
We have a motion and a second.
There's a motion to the second.
The simple is to expand it to the three firms, the top three firms. If you want to add something about the rates, that's fine.
I don't think we
If not,
have
just-
to.
just leave it
No,
so,
I think you
that's
need to
fine.
look this way because
So
I
we-
also would like to
I'm
put
sorry.
something in the record.
Okay.
Okay, it's great that you want to negotiate rates, but you need to do that before the RFQ goes out and everybody submits, because everybody did submit a price, and that's what we've accepted. The problem that I have with the motion is the following. The rule, the policy was set before we open up those bids. Before we opened up those bids and we knew who the winners were and how they were ranked, we made a vote, a decision to go with two. Under the auspice and the recommendation, and it was unanimous, under the auspice and the recommendation of council. So we did that. Yes, it is different to what the RFP, RFQ went out. It was up to 3, and we fully understood that. I fully understand that we all want to go with 3, but just understand what it is you're proceeding with. And I'm saying it because I recognize it too.
Yes.
As much as I want number 3 too, the rule, the horse had left the station. It was running, and the decision was casted before. Now it is a situation of you know who number 3 is, and so you're selective and you've got a preference. As long as you can live with that, that is fine.
Mr. Chair?
I just want to go. Well, you go ahead. You had the.
First of all, I don't care who number 3 is. I didn't pick because of that. I chose because Mr. Lasarte made a statement that's a good statement on the issue of conflict of interest. Let's start there. So if number 3 would have been Martians from outer space, they would have been fine with me. I have no interest whatsoever in one over another.
It's all about perception and appearances.
But
so it is
again-
what it is.
But again,
It is what it is.
my statement, because I didn't have that information, which apparently the majority of attorneys agree that they have a lot of conflicts, and it makes sense because there are big firms. Now, that is why I'm willing to accept a third firm, not because they are a specific firm. So, for the record, I want that very clear. And because we have the ability to do so.
Let's also look at another thing. The difference.
And we've
between
done it
2
many
and
times
3 is
before.
less than the difference between 2 and 3 is less than a point.
But guys,
It's because what is in the
more
best
importantly,
interest of the
and we could ask our general counsel, was any bidder prejudiced by this? Because really, that's what a court's going to look at.
No.
I believe the answer is
Mr. Chair, 2 items. First, because our procurement did allow up to 3, there is a recommendation from the committee to the board for 2. That was based on, frankly, my recommendation because we didn't really feel that there would be enough work to support 3 firms. But this committee does, or the board does have the ability to reject that recommendation of the committee and go with 3 because that was authorized by the procurement. One thing that I do want to point out on the conflicts of interest issue, though, if you will note in your tabulation sheet that conflicts of interest was an issue that all of the firms were evaluated on. And so some firms got more points than others based on based on what they discussed in terms of what their potential conflicts were, as well as what strategies they had in place to minimize any conflicts and how that might affect MDX. So that was one of the evaluation criteria that the committee did take into consideration.
Can I ask a question of the council? What happens if both of them have a conflict of interest and we want to negotiate a P3? What do we do then?
If both of the firms have a conflict of interest, and let's say we only have 2, then neither firm will be able to represent us. And, you know, and I guess it's also conceivable that all three firms could have a conflict of interest. You never know. Lightning could strike. Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mayor.
I'd like to point out that in the raw figures, the firm of Ackerman Centerfit with Mayor Brown came in second. In other words, the top numbers just on the numerical merits was 291 by Nossaman. The second one, as I see it, is 274 by Ackerman Mayor Brown. Okay, now I got to tell you, and I have friends in all these law firms. It seems to me that somebody really screwed up big at the Ackerman firm, because all they had to do is bring in, and they know better, an SB or an LB, and they would have gotten 24 points automatically. Are you following me? In other words, they know how to play the game, and the rules were set. Greenberg, who also knows how to play the game, put in, and they got those extra 24 points.
Right.
Ackerman could have done that and would have had, instead of 274, would have had 274 plus 24, plus whatever, you know. So in a way, they've created their own problems. However, I don't think that there's any question but that they made excellent presentations. It's a tremendous firm, and that we set up to 3. And that really is the guideline. Pamela is the one, I mean, our attorney, our in-house attorney, was the one who recommended 2, and the board took her recommendation and voted unanimously for it. But there's no reason why the board cannot overrule that and go to 3. I don't have any problems with that.
Are there any more questions or comments? There's a motion, there's a second. If we could have a roll call on this issue, because I feel maybe there might be people wanting to vote a different way.
Mr. Ferre?
Yes.
Ms. Gutierrez? No. Mr. Holland?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Pago?
Yes.
Mr. Sanabria?
Yes.
Ms. Solar McKinley?
Yes.
Mr. Vigil?
Yes.
Mr. Wortman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fano? Yes. Chair Lazarte?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 8D.
This next item is a proposed non-toll revenue policy. This was endorsed by the Policy and Planning Committee on October 19th and was proposed by Board Member Gutierrez.
Mr. Sanabria?
Yeah, I have several questions on this. I understand it's moving it forward from a general policy that was adopted in the past. What do you mean by non-toll revenue exactly? What is your definition of non-toll revenue? Is it anything that is like an asset-related development, or are you talking about advertising revenues? Where are you focusing this on?
There's 3 components to this. This is actually the conduit, the policy that will hold what happens from that marketing team that will be presenting to the board. And whatever their successes are, this is where the money is going to come to, and it's going to be realized. Instead of it going back to general funds and being used, is going to be used to fund initiatives that have to do with customer appreciation. It is not free. It is reduced toll opportunities. That's where it's at. Now, why is it 3 that I started with? Is the only other document that exists so far is a resolution that we all voted and approved 2 years ago that basically said we all want a customer appreciation program, and we were going to seek and do a process that would engage in that. And we have done so, and we're almost there. So this is now the policy that will house everything and basically say, okay, when these monies are realized, whichever little or whichever how much, This will be the conduit that will say it goes back to the customers as an appreciation at a reduced toll rate.
Okay, and this will be held in a separate fund, these monies? Or is it going to the general fund?
Separate, it's not about separate fund, it's about separate use. Use
But it
for
will
its
go to-
intended purpose.
If I may, I think I understand what the question is when you talk about non-toll revenue, the point is that we do collect some non-toll revenues today based on leases and stuff that we have. I think the intent of the resolution that was passed a year and a half ago and this policy is more related to the contract we issued with the firm that's going to look at our entire asset base and see how we can maximize some opportunities. If we need to specify that, Pam, to tie it directly to that contract, maybe we can add language to specify it to that language. The point is, whatever is generated from there, if it's $10 that's generated, come budget time, as we're funding our operating budget, primarily in the public communications side, public outreach, we can have a line item that says customer rewards. This fund that's being generated by this firm that's looking at ways to maximize non-toll, that's the money that would be used. All or a portion, and I believe that's the way it's written, it would be up to the board during budget time to decide at what level to fund that line item potentially, which could be a variety of programs, but it's a line item under the operations budget, under the communications side.
But it refers to SunPass.
Well, the idea
So,
of the...
so how does that tie in?
The idea of the resolution that was passed prior talked about it being available to SunPass holders.
Well, isn't
because
there-
those are the
But those are the customers.
Those are the customers that
Those are
use
the
the
customers.
facility
No,
most
we
often.
understand that, but there seems to be some nebulous definition of tying some language together here, because it seems like a percentage of non-toll revenues will be towards outreach. How does that, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, are we lowering the cost of some pass users? Are we sending
Potentially.
refund checks? I mean, and I understand the concept.
It is-
I like the concept, but just...
Board Member Sanabria, I don't know. The point is that whatever that program might be, that the funds to finance it come from this non-toll revenue contract.
They'll be part of the general
Well,
revenue?
Right. What we cannot do is give free tolls. And that was specific in the resolution. And what we cannot do is jeopardize our compliance with the authority's debt service ratio. So there was a number of financial constraints in putting the resolution together. What we did is take it to the next step and create a policy that takes that resolution into policy and creates the mechanism that during operating budget development, MDX will annually appropriate funds derived from this non-toll revenue program. Now, what we can do is define it better to only talk about this particular contract, and that's
Well,
I think something that could be
one thing that
be done.
one thing that I like to add, and I know that Board Member Gutierrez, supports this strongly. I support it very strongly as well. I want these funds not to be part of any department's funds. I want it to be a standalone fund that's going to go for these, for these customer reward program. What happens a lot of the times, and I'm not saying it's going to happen here, but 10 years from now, maybe I know I'm certainly not going to be here, and a lot of us aren't. Cindy probably won't be here. Now, oh mate, you'll be here.
He means here
Now,
in the board,
the
here in the board. He doesn't
story
mean
is-
here in real life.
At that point, nobody remembers that that this was a Board Member Gutierrez's idea about a customer rewards program. That this was the idea, and then all of a sudden now this becomes a slush fund for some department to start doing whatever there is, and that wasn't really the point of this. I want it as a standalone, if we can, and I don't know much about budgeting, but we can have it as a standalone item. Not part of a department's budget, in that money is given for this customer rewards program.
want it in general revenue.
Right. Go ahead.
Is it possible, I guess I support the program, as long as it's tied to the particular contracts that we're talking about, and it lasts no longer than the duration of those contracts, because we don't know 20 years from now what these non-toll revenues will be and what the need of the system will be. And I wouldn't want to tie somebody's hands generations to come on something that we think is a good idea now or for the next 5 years. So again, if it's tightly tailored to the particular RFP that is out there, and we have a vendor, and the ideas that they come up with, and the limit or the time frame of those contracts, I fully support that.
We actually tied it, for the board, we actually tied it even tighter, where it year to year during the budgeting cycle. So
Right.
every year when we create our budget, whether it's Alfred's budget in engineering or Steve's or any of the budgets, at that time, the board can decide this is not the time to do this because we're not going to meet our debt service ratio, so we don't want to do it a particular year. You're not tying the hands. So it specifically talks to the year to year, and the program can vary depending on what is generated and what is needed or what isn't needed to the overall MDX mission.
Well, I think we're talking two different things. I think one is a program. There may be a program that we say, all right, that was fine. We want to enhance that and do something different. It gives us the flexibility to change the programs. The question becomes whether or not this is a dedicated funding source that goes forth forever. And there may be some other changes that have taken place in our system. So I don't have a problem with making it a dedicated revenue stream for the term of those contracts, because we may decide, somebody may decide 10 years from now that there's another emphasis that needs to be taken care of. And we've seen this happen at the state level where they put these restrictions on what dollars could be used for sometimes, i.e. convention development tax can only be used for a convention center or a stadium. And people say, well, I don't understand why you're building stuff, these baseball stadiums at $750 million, but you're raising the taxes by the same amount somewhere else. So sometimes it can come back and bite us too. But I do support the program as it is, as it's been put forth for that limited period of time of the contract.
And the reason it's year to year is because the contract was 1 year that we have with the particular vendor.
Go ahead, Board Member.
Yeah. The beauty of this policy, Member Holland, is that it doesn't tie us to any one amount, because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know how much the non-toll revenue contract is going to generate. We anticipate that it could do well, but we don't know that. It ties back to giving back to the customer, but we also don't know how much is going to be given back in any one program. It's just stating that this is the purpose and the intent. How it gets funded, that's something that's going to be analyzed every year depending on what comes in. Mind you, on what you're saying, if it means that the tolls need to go up and there's enough funding here to be considered to alleviate those tolls going up, of course this funding can be used, because it goes back to the same thing, customer appreciation. But if ever it would raise that kind of money, we better be thanking and blessing everybody's heart that they've done a great job, because that means we sold a lot. They sold a lot. But I don't think it's driven that way. It's more driven of, this is the conduit that houses the money, not to be spent on anything but giving back to our customers, because they need a relief too. And if we're getting something that's branded, sponsored, advertising, which is not normally, and it isn't a toll, then it goes back to rewarding them through the SunPass conduit. And why SunPass? Because those are our customers. We're not going to give it to someone that isn't a customer.
Mr. Chairman, and I like the idea. Just a fine line of some definition. For example, right now we have non-toll revenues as we are landlords of certain warehouses, okay? We have non-toll revenues as there's some interest paid on CDs, and we have non-toll revenues on a number of other things. So I just want to understand if this
It isn't those.
If this
And
is,
I think
wait,
language
let me
needs to be
finish
put
the
in.
question. If this is enveloping those kind of non-toll revenues, that's one of the things that I want to know.
We can specify in the
Is
policy
this being
the contract
specific
number.
enough?
Mr. Snobry, 2 points of clarification. And I think that you do make a very valid point that right now we did not specifically reference the
Contract
RFP
number.
for the non-toll revenue. We just said non-toll revenue program, and I think it would provide a clarification if we did tie it to that. But, and unfortunately, Marie's not here, but I wanted to make sure that the board understood that she did review this, and because this policy is tied that it must comply with the previously adopted Resolution 10-03, that at no point, regardless of how we want to use non-toll revenue, if the financial condition of the authority is such that we would not meet our debt service coverages or anything else, that we would not be precluded from using non-toll revenue to meet those very critical financial aspects of the operation of the authority. So it's tied both to non-toll revenue, and I think that that Board Member Gutierrez did anticipate that it would be tied to this newly acquired contract program that we've got, and we can make that one clarification to note that it is revenue that is derived from any programs that are presented to the board from that particular procurement. But
shouldn't that be clarified at this point
I
in
think that
time?
we can make that one language change, and that would clarify it, assuming that that is in conformance with the Board Member Gutierrez's intention, which I believe it was. But the other thing to keep in mind is it is also tied to being sure that it does not in any way conflict with 10-03, which was previously adopted by this board.
Go ahead, Mr. Wortman.
Okay, I see two parts of this. One, the money where it's coming from, and then number two, the money where it's going to, and percentages, requirements, allotments. Number one, the non-toll revenue, whether it's being from the land leases, interest, okay, advertising, whatever the P3, whatever we're coming up with for non-toll, as that money increases, comes in there, okay, that is not dedicated 100% towards this. It's whatever percent is determined by whatever plan is approved, but this is just restricting it, saying that this program will be restricted to non-toll revenue, not toll revenue, okay, which we have a lot less in the bond restrictions on. Okay, so saying that if the program is developed and where the money goes to, any projects, any rewards program, any things, incentives, say getting people that are driving from 8 to 10 in the morning or 4 to 6 in the afternoon, if they moved outside those hours, it could be an incentive to them, high volume or whatever that's used for, be used. But it doesn't mean that 100% of the non-toll revenue, we may decide to take 1% of it or 90% of it. We may decide that, hey, the urban interchange program, whatever it is, comes up, and hey, if we have 15, 20 million coming in, bond it out for 10 years and put 200 million into that and put 8 million into the rewards or whatever it is. All this means is that the first part, it's defined where the monies can come from, but doesn't mean that it has to go there. And number two is that any program that is brought forward, and the key word is any program that is brought forward, it's not finished. It has to mean that the board still gets to review those programs before we approve it. So at this point, I'm looking at this as a funding source to set the foundation for what we can do in the future, but not obligating us 100% in any one direction. It gives us some foundation, but still leaves flexibility and determination by staff and board. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, if I may, and I think I owe this to the entire board. All revenues generated by the system are pledged to the system, and that's in our trust indenture. That's what's in our bond documents. If this board wanted to create a customer rewards program, we can't give anything free, that's specified. But if you wanted to, then we would look at our operating budget, revenues collected, and what it takes to operate, and we would decide year after year how much that program needs to be funded. And that would come from the revenues that are generated in the agency. This contract that we have engaged for non-toll to explore revenues that we don't have right now, that we haven't tapped into, would be an additional revenue source that allows us to tap into assets that we haven't maximized, for instance. And all we're saying is, guys, public, we're going to take the pressure off increasing of tolls if one day that is an issue because this is a new funding source. But in the meantime, this is a program that makes sense to reward our customers. And in the policy, specifically it says that year after year, the board, through its budgeting process, through its approval of the operating budget, its conformance with all of the financial mandates, will have that opportunity to make decisions on size, type, and so on. But I have to say, all revenues generated by the system are pledged to the system. We're just tapping into something that we haven't tapped into in the past.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I think this is an exceptionally well-thought-through process. I commend Maritza for her initiative on this, and I'd be honored to second it after she makes the motion.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Okay, I just want to know, again, the category of non-toll revenues, how do we define it? We have parking lot rentals. We have warehouses that we temporarily own, that
We're going to specify.
we have dividend interest. I mean, those are all non-toll revenues. So this is focused upon what?
Mr. Executive
Apart-
Director, if I can suggest on the first page of this policy, paragraph 2, the second line, if we just add in there where it says MDX non-toll revenue program associated with RFP, and I'll just have to get the number from Ms. Cordero, but
Okay.
That's what we're talking
and that'll tie it to that, and I think clarify the issue.
Beautiful.
Do you accept that friendly?
Absolutely.
I accept it.
Call the question. Go
I
ahead.
accept it as a third.
There's a third hearing. There's a motion. There's motion. Is there any objections? Hearing none, item
As amended.
passes. As amended. As amended. The
Aye.
informational items, procurement report. That's in there. We're not going to read that. We're going to read it. We don't have to. I don't have any comments. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move it.
You guys have use for this, huh? You want it?
No, I don't.
Es una cosa increíble. Yo voy a ir a...
Totally under the boat.
Pero ahora cuando venga la fecha, yo voy a estar
That's my wife.
grande que es. Nueva baby.
That's my little Peter.